there. Show your hand.
Surrounded by federal agents, a loaded gun pointed at his head. Those moments of Court Stack's life replay in his nightmares.
I was wondering, why would someone point a loaded gun at my face? I mean, what does this have to do with anything? It's open the door and point a loaded gun at someone's face who's in an office in a management position. It made me feel really scared, kind of helpless.
It was his first and only encounter with law enforcement. He will never forget it. Neither will the other employees at this small Arkansas water bottling company. Their vivid accounts of that day were used to produce an accurate reenactment of the federal raid on Mountain Pure Water Company.
We saw all of the cop cars in the commotion, and nobody could come in.
They come in with black vehicles, unmarked, blocked every entrance. There was probably 40 to 50 agents, blocked every door. They just come in full speed.
They had surrounded the facility and entered all the doors and secured the whole premises when they came in.
Yes, I was scared to move because, they had guns on and you couldn't really move. You couldn't go nowhere.
First of all, it was ridiculous. I mean, there was nobody here that needed manned with firearms or to be guarded.
Well, it was almost like you'd watch Cops or something, or watch these drug raid shows where they would kind of come through the door, just everybody storms in and just kind of pushing everybody to the side.
And there's police everywhere with guns, and it just blew me away. I didn't know what was going on, I thought maybe it was drugs or they was after a felon or something, but they had a lot of police.
I felt violated. I felt the company was violated, everyone here. We were all in shock.
And they came through the door and they pushed us over to the wall and went down through the hallway. They were very serious. They were very well intending to take control of the facility and to intimidate us in the sense of complying with them.
We were saying, oh my gosh, what's going on? And but as far as being able to really say something to each other, we couldn't. We had them all on top of us, no matter what. They were everywhere. They were everywhere.
At first, everybody thought it was some type of drug raid or something because there were so many people, or so many cops.
But this was no drug raid. No violent criminals hiding inside the walls of this facility. In fact, employees here were shocked when they discovered the real reason behind the terrifying paramilitary Gestapo-style raid. This raid was about securing paperwork concerning financial transactions of the company's owner, John Stacks. Paperwork they would have gladly shared at the request of a single agent. No need for an aggressive raid by 40 to 50 armed agents.
Well, in my opinion, the raid itself was totally unnecessary. The government has subpoena power with the grand jury. They could have subpoenaed anything they wanted to, and I've known John Stacks for a long time. John would have given them whatever they subpoenaed. There was simply no need to bring 40 or 50 officers out here and storm this place like they did.
I don't think that we have anybody in our facility that, with our background checks, that have any kind of active criminal background. And yet, you've got a tactical team that entered our facility and treated every one of our employees as though they were involved in criminal activity. And that was pretty amazing to me. The same information that was gleaned, if they would have walked in the front door, they could have had. No reason to think that there would have been any issues or any opposition to that, and surely not from our employees working on the floor.
John Stacks, the company's owner, was not at the plant when the raid started. He and his other son, Ryan, an attorney, were shocked to discover upon arrival that Stacks could not even enter his own facility, nor provide his employees with a company attorney. He says one agent even threatened to arrest him for obstruction of justice.
They told us to sit down. They told us to shut up. They told us that they would deal with us in their own time, and told us again we needed to leave or they would arrest us for obstruction of justice. And, I told them this was my place of business. I was the owner, and I thought I had a right to know what was going on.
My father had asked to go in, and they said no, he could not. And I'd asked to go in, they said no. And I said, well, as an attorney and representing Mountain Pure, I would like to be present in what searches or things you're conducting. And they said no. And we found out they were conducting interviews, and I said, well, I'd like to sit in on those. We were also told no.
And what I'm going to say is a direct quote. We're the federal government. We can do what we want, when we want, and there's nothing you can do about it. I was blessed to have a father that fought against Nazis in World War II. It's my generation's turn to fight. The problem is, it's on this country we gotta fight. I'm not a militant. They've thrown the Constitution away. We did not have lawyers. I requested that a lawyer be brought, the corporate attorney be contacted. That was thrown out the window. My wife saw this on TV. I could tell by my ringtone she was calling. I could hear my phone ring. I'm not allowed to answer it. Am I arrested? Am I detained? No one would tell us anything. Don't worry about it, just sit down. They threw our liberties out the window. They treated us like third-class citizens. If people are not outraged, they need to be. This used to be America. Now it's not.
The language they use, the profanity they used over and over again, screaming and hollering at me, calling me and referring to me as Old Man Stacks. And then one of the law officers there told me this, kept telling me, well, why don't you just touch me, Old Man Stacks? I'll show you what a federal officer can do to you. And did everything he could to provoke me, and literally hovering over me and literally spitting in my face as he was hollering and screaming at me.
I remember thinking, to me, it was almost like something you would see in a fictional movie. I couldn't believe what was occurring. It's to an extent I felt like I was in a third world country, the way they were treating us.
Meanwhile, inside the building, agents shut down plant operations. The assembly line came to a screeching halt. All employees were herded to one room, their cell phones confiscated, as well as pocket knives or other items that could be perceived as weapons.
They disconnected all the phones, they disconnected the internet, and we was just left waiting. It was embarrassing to see them just bust the door with no one knowing what was going on. And then they acted like the employees were just a bunch of drug dealers.
Again, I would have never fathomed that something to this extent could take place, in the United States. And it was one of the wildest things, the craziest things that I've ever been a part of. We were being treated similarly to what you would with some type of terrorist, essentially. They pretty much told us under these circumstances we really didn't have any rights at the time, and it was. I don't really know that I can put words to the feeling, to what I was feeling, other than just disbelief.
What agents did next further compounded that disbelief. They seized computers, laptops, employees' personal items, flash drives, and financial records. 82 boxes of materials.
There were two legal problems with the raid. First, I think the warrant for the raid was invalid. The Fourth Amendment requires that the items to be seized in a search be described with particularity in the warrant. This warrant, in describing the items to be seized, referenced the attachment. The attachment says that the officers can seize all evidence relevant to a violation of the statutes listed on the warrant. There were no statutes listed on the warrant. So they were either authorized to seize nothing or to seize anything they wanted to, and they seized anything they wanted to. So in my opinion, the warrant was invalid. The other was, officers are authorized by law to detain folks in the area to be searched long enough to assure the officer's safety. I think they greatly exceeded the amount of time necessary to ensure their safety, because they detained folks for several hours here. Wouldn't let them leave, wouldn't let them call a lawyer, and I think that was illegal.
8 months has passed since the raid. Mountain Pure Company officials say 85% of the seized items have not been returned. Employees who spent most of the day and evening with agents also made another discovery about the raid and the agents involved.
I tried to visit with a few of the agents and overheard a few of the agents talking, and it came to my attention that a majority of the approximately 50 agents had came from out of town, East Coast, West Coast, all over the U.S. That was really troublesome in that we already have a lot of issues with our government spending and trying to stay within budget, and you take 30 plus agents and you fly them in from all over the country and you put them up for a night and you feed them, or maybe 2 nights it was. What is the expense of that?
News agencies flooded to the small company, and as news accounts of this big raid hit the airwaves, Stax was flooded with phone calls from business owners around the country. They shared horror stories about their own businesses subjected to armed, aggressive, intimidating raids by the Justice Department and the Criminal Investigation Division of the Internal Revenue Service. Stories that sounded eerily familiar. Duncan Outdoors was one of those businesses.
I just kept saying, what have we done? Are we being arrested? And I did ask, I said, do we need to call an attorney? And the one guy looked at me and said, you can call an attorney, but it won't do any good. We're the IRS. We can do anything we want.
So the tactics are definitely Gestapo-type tactics that should not be happening in the United States of America. It's similar to what you might see in a SWAT raid on a drug house. And that's what a lot of people thought when they saw this.
The CEO of Gibson Guitar can certainly relate. His business was raided twice. The raid tactics sounding awfully familiar.
It was very much like a drug raid or, terrorist raid, actually. The agents or officers, whatever they were not friendly. They were armed, they were hostile, they were intimidating. But to have it done twice and not having been charged with anything is really bizarre. We incurred losses, we incurred military-style action, we had seizures, our workplace was closed, and we had threats that they would close us, period, and yet we hadn't been charged with a single thing.
The raids cost Gibson Guitar Company well over $5 million in goods seized, work stoppage, and legal expenses, all without having to prove to any judicial body that anyone with the company was guilty of anything. And in the case of the Duncans, who had also not been charged with a crime, the government even seized money from their bank accounts without telling them.
If the federal government could come in before you're convicted of any crime and take hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your bank account, shut down your business, tell your employees what to do, keep you from your family, I mean, at what point is it so overkill that no reasonable person would be able to respond rationally, reasonably, defend themselves? I mean, nobody could do that. I mean, to me, it just seems like if you can walk into the bank and I don't even know about it and wipe out my bank account, where does it stop?
It's no secret that IRS audits of small businesses have soared under the Obama administration. The tax division of Eric Holder's Justice Department, which supervises all criminal proceedings under internal revenue laws, has been very busy. Various articles on the net refer to it as small business bullying, citing a 32% increase in the number of audits of small to medium-sized businesses between 2009 and 2011, since Eric Holder took over the Justice Department. An increasing number of these businesses being audited report being subjected to paramilitary aggressive raids.
Well, I think over the course of several years, what we've seen is an increase in a really a paramilitary style raid that's going on small businesses. We've seen that increase for so long, and when I say a paramilitary raid, I really mean it is a paramilitary raid. It's a specific tactic that is a military tactic. It's a shock and awe. It's designed to create confusion, instability, disruption, and then to take advantage of that confusion, that instability, and disruption.
But when you have small business owners with impeccable backgrounds that enjoy outstanding reputations in their community, that have never been in trouble in their whole life, and then when the offense does not imply any sort of dangerousness or violence, the paramilitary-style raid is over the top.
We talked with a number of businesses in various states around the country. All of them tell the same story. Some of them were too afraid to speak with us on camera, and many so fearful of government retaliation, they asked us not to use their names or the names of their businesses. And while many of these government investigations and raids led to charges related to white-collar crimes, the guilt or innocence of the business executives involved is not the issue. At issue is the Gestapo paramilitary tactics being utilized by the government in these raids, tactics that are in clear violation of the constitutional rights of American citizens.
Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution guarantees, in fact it says, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. So every American fundamentally has the right not to be detained, and this is important, anywhere, not just in prison, has a right not to be detained anywhere. So that is an enormous concern because the stories we're hearing, apparently that is happening. And that doesn't even go into the Miranda requirements of being read your personal rights and being afforded the opportunity to have an attorney, which we're also being told as being abridged. The two pillars of freedom and liberty in the country are the rights to property and the rights to privacy. So when those are abridged or they're somehow injured, then there's an enormous constitutional concern on the most fundamental guarantees of liberty and freedom as an American citizen.
Curtis Coleman, chairman of the Institute on Constitutional Policy, says Congress has an obligation to call for a House investigation and that states need to reclaim state sovereignty to defend their citizens from federal abuse of power.
One of the solutions to these kind of issues is for states to begin to, instead of representing the federal government to their citizens, to start representing the citizens to their federal government. The states are going to have to start pushing back and start recovering the balance of power intended by the Constitution. And they're going to have to start recovering their constitutionally intended sovereignty. And this is one of the areas in which the state can function. If there are repeated reports of increasing frequency that the rights, the fundamental rights of privacy and property and writs of habeas corpus are being infringed, then the Congress has a constitutional obligation to perform its oversight, to investigate the incidences, to determine if there's a pattern.
Some business owners are committed to pushing for that legislative action.
The issue is there is absolutely no consequence for a bad government action. So the executive branch now has king-like, emperor-like authority that circumvents constitutional balance that were foreseen by our forefathers. And because it's taken 100+ years to get here, it's going to be really hard to sort of get back to that sense of balance. But I am committed to working towards that end and spending years doing it.
Getting the legislative branch to call a House investigation to rein in the executive branch of government may help Americans regain some lost rights. But Gary Duncan, a former Green Beret who served his country over 2 decades, fears some things lost may never be recovered.
I think that as a result of the raid, a lot of people's opinion of my integrity would be damaged. And that bothers me a lot. My credibility will be damaged forever. You know, when something that negative and that powerful is done to you and you have nothing that you can do,